Welcome back, everybody. Fighters Fury here on 790 The Ticket. Tobin here with you. We'll wrap up with a little bit of a little smorgasbord we have going on here. First of all, congratulations to Shannon the Cannon Briggs, our boy. Let's go, champ. We love Shannon. We did, it's funny enough, like Shannon's like the last non-family member I've really interacted with. It's like, I'm trying to think of the last outside of like going to the grocery store. I'm talking about like, I had a point to go see somebody who wasn't my mother, who I've been moving into her new place, helping move into her new place, or my kids, or my wife, or my in-laws. But other than that, like Leroy, I haven't seen Leroy. I miss Leroy. I went to Shannon's house to interview him, and shout out to his guy Lee, who set up the whole interview. And they did a great write-up in the Miami Herald. But we got the scoop first that Shannon told you he was going to bare knuckle fighting, which was a heavily circulated rumor, but he told you, like, we're going to start off in BKFC, and that was announced this week. Bare knuckle fighting championship, David Feldman, they announced that Shannon is going to be fighting for their promotion. Look, I've had my questions with bare knuckle. Not watching it, it's not a question of like me thinking it's too barbaric or anything like that. Like I've been now in person to 2 cards, and I've made this point. I've seen crazy things happen at MMA, boxing, and bare knuckle. I've seen what I feel like is it all as far as like vicious knockouts are concerned. The only thing that's the only thing that I would say is there's a lot more room for error in a fight kind of getting messed up in bare knuckle. And so not having the padding of a glove, like, don't forget it is a sport. People are paying to go see, performances. And sometimes you watch the top of the cards on these bare knuckle cards and it's like boom, 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 boom. So the pacing is cool, but sometimes the endings are kind of like flimsy. But you have a guy like Shannon Briggs attached to BKFC. I think he's going to help tremendously in getting attention on the card. How more people aren't using. Honestly, I really, really believe this. How more people aren't using Shannon the Cannon Briggs for their cards is bananas to me. The guy is a social media savant. He's a great promoter. He's fun energy. He's getting mentioned at Anthony Joshua press conferences left and right. I will say this. I wish I would have gotten into this a little bit more with Shannon. But it's funny how he kind of went from the ultimate antagonist to in the boxing game to kind of the ultimate like big brother in a lot of ways. Like a lot of the Tyson Fury, Andy Ruiz. Probably not Deontay Wilder. Like they had a pretty heated beef, but like Anthony Joshua shouted him out on HBO. So he's gone to this cool role in fight culture. So I think it's gonna be fun for him. I hope he's gonna have monster success. I think he is. Especially he puts that cannon cooker right in someone's ribs with no padding. That's bad news, man. And you guys see all the fun loving stuff with Shannon, but I've been in that locker room seeing him warm up. It's a scary individual when it comes to him cracking you, for sure. So I think it's going to be an awesome showcase for Shannon the Cannon Briggs. I think BKFC got one on him, got one with him as far as a guy who's going to put on a great show, a guy I think can be really good at that. And then my hope for him is, like he said, like I asked him, what does he want out of all this chasing fights? What would be the dream one? Like, does he have these illusions of still being heavyweight champion? Is that still a thing? Does he look at a guy like Tyson Fury, who's 18 years his junior, and think that I can make that comeback in 2 years? And I think that he was honest. He's like, that's going to take a long time. He kind of got on the doorstep there with Fresakendo before his positive test. And that kind of spiral, that kind of kiboshed the comeback, But he made it clear that if he has one boxing goal left, it is to fight Vladimir Klitschko. And I think that would be a monster fight. I really, really do. Because if Klitschko is coming back, Tyson Fury, somebody needs to make Vladimir Klitschko exciting. And if I'm one of the young guns, I'm not excited about fighting Vladimir Klitschko. So he needs to get himself into a clash with somebody who will bring some youth to him, you know? And in a lot of ways it's weird to say it, but Shannon brings a young audience. He's a guy who's been tied to Logan Paul recently. Was there at the Jake Paul KSI fight, or not the Jake Paul Gibb fight. You know, he's kind of got now a foot in that world, even if stuff didn't like end that great with him and Jake Paul with all that nonsense around it. They still know him. And so I think it gets a lot of attention and could make Klitschko relevant. I do think it's a problem for Klitschko, though. I think that Shannon can do some work there for sure. I think he's got to do it quick, but I think he can do work. It's just going to be a matter of time. So anyway, congratulations to him finally having that be announced, and can't wait to see you in the squared circle, Shannon. It's going to be fun to see you with BKFC for sure. One other note before we get out of here. A couple things I want to make a point of before we get out of here. One, Errol Spence, he said on Monday this week that he's hoping to return to the ring by September, October, would like to fight Manny Pacquiao or Terrence Crawford. I want to say this. I hope that this pandemic does one thing for boxing. First of all, boxing is going to have a lot of catching up to do. There's a lot of fighters talking about financial ruin and talking about the hardships they have. It's time to stop with this whole elongating the process. And I'm not talking about, the 17, 18-year-olds. I know that there has to be somewhat of a plan for these guys. They get 4 fights a year to bring them along slowly. But when they get to that 21, 22-year-old mold, if they're in the age range, 23, I want to start seeing these guys have primo fights that really rise them to the top. These guys get coddled for too damn long. And I'm not trying to say that they're not tough or anything like that, but what it feels like is they're just wasting time. They're wasting time, and I feel like there's just such great value in these guys going in there, fighting big fights, and people will give them more credit for that stuff because so much of the time, look at a guy like, Deontay Wilder, who's going to be 34 years old, and people feel like he's only been in 4 real fights in his career. I feel like a guy like that should have been a much bigger deal at a much younger age. And so I hope that this pandemic realizes to a lot of people in boxing that time is fragile and that we get to the fights that we need to get to a lot sooner, that we stop jerking ourselves around here and talk about, this is the plan. We go here, we go there. No, let's get to the fights, man. Let's get to Errol Spence versus Terrence Crawford. Let's get to Anthony Joshua, Deontay Wilder. Let's get to Tyson Fury versus Anthony Joshua. Let's get to Lomachenko taking on Teofimo Lopez. Let's get to Devin Haney versus Ryan Garcia. Let's get to these huge matchups that we get, Gervonta Davis versus Lomachenko. Let's get to these ones, Demetrius Andrade versus Canelo, Demetrius Andrade versus the Charlos. All these things that were just thrown up there that are just like, what are we waiting for here, man? What are we doing? So I hope that this pandemic gives boxing a little bit more of an urgency factor, to not always go in there and keep things just think we got all the time in the world. And then finally, before we get out of here, because I got to wrap things up, I saw Floyd Mayweather doing some cool posts this week, where he was talking about that the passing of his uncle, Roger Mayweather, has kind of inspired him to train. And I think that'd be really cool. Now, look, this is going to be an interesting one because Floyd Mayweather's always the show. He's always the show. He's always the A side. And so... but he's getting older, so I'm not saying he can't do it, but he was saying that he wants to be the greatest trainer in the world. That he says that I will be one of the best trainers in the world. Posting pictures of his son and his nephew hitting mitts. That'll be cool, man. I think that's a cool story of Floyd Mayweather turns himself into not only the great fighters, but turns himself into one of the greatest trainers because I think we've seen over his career, if you could talk about Floyd, you may not like the way that he fights or his style of fighting, but you do come away with it with a great appreciation for his knowledge. I think the word clinic is best applied to him maybe than any other fighter. So I'm looking forward to that show, man. I'm looking forward to seeing that journey. Check out his Instagram post on that. That's our episode for this week, everybody. Hope you enjoyed it, and we will be back same time, same place next week. Have a happy Easter. Have a happy Passover to everybody. To all the people who maybe need a little bit of faith out there with everything that's going on. I hope you find some comfort this week for sure in family, in what you believe in. All the best to you guys, and we'll talk to you next time.